All right, so now we are going to figure out what we need to do if we've got some negatives in there. So let's say that we have r squared minus 7r plus 12. Now I'm just going to tell you how this one factors, and then I want you to look at it and make sure it's right and try to see what's happening along the way. So if we were to check our work, we'd want a FOIL to make sure that this is really the way it factors. So for f, r times r, that gives me r squared, so that looks good. For the O, for outside, negative 3 times r, that's negative 3r. I for the inside, negative 4 times r, that's negative 4r. Negative 3r minus 4r, that gives me the negative 7r in the middle. Now how do I end up with that positive 12? I don't have positive numbers over there. There you go, negative 4 times negative 3 gives me a positive 12. So if I've got a positive on the end, if my C is positive, remember A is the number in front of the squared term, B is the number in front of the single variable, C is the number without any variable at all. If C is positive, I'll either have two positives like I did in the first two examples, or I will have two negatives. This example I had two negatives. I'll show you how to tell which one in just a second. On the other hand, if C is negative, the only way to get a negative number on the end is to have one positive number times one negative number. So I'll have, if C is positive, I'll have two positives. If B is positive, if your middle term is positive. If C is positive, then and you'll have two negatives if B is negative. Let me show you this in practice. What the next slide is going to be, before I click there and it shows up, it will be 8 examples, 8 polynomials that we need to factor. We aren't going to factor any of them right away. We're going to go through every single one of them and decide what the signs will be. The first thing we will do is look at C. We'll look at the number on the end. If the number on the end is positive, I know that I'll either have two positives or two negatives, and I'll decide which way it goes by looking at the middle term. If C is negative, I know I have one of each. So here are 8 examples. Okay, so for this first one, the first place I look for x squared minus 10x plus 9, the first place I look is at the 9. 9 is positive. That tells me I either have two positives or two negatives. I know which one by looking at the middle term. Negative 10x is negative, so that tells me I have an x minus and an x minus. Okay, let's go over to the next one, x squared plus 10x plus 9. The first place I look at is at the 9. That's positive, so I either have two positives or two negatives. I'll decide which one by looking at the middle term. The middle term is positive, so I have two positives. Okay, let's come on down to x squared minus 10x plus 24. Actually, pause the video, fill in the rest, and see how you do. Okay, now that you're back. So the first place we look is at 24. That's positive. So I either have two positives or two negatives. I know which one by looking at the middle term, so I have two negatives. Okay, x squared minus 10x minus 24. First place I look is negative 24. Okay, that's negative. Automatically I have one of each. I don't even care about the middle term. If that last term is negative, I just have one of each and then I keep on going. Okay, x squared minus 5x plus 6. The first place I look is at the 6. It's positive, so I either have two positives or two negatives. I know which one by looking at the middle term, so it tells me I have two negatives. X squared minus 5x minus 6. Okay, I look at the last term, which is negative. Automatically, I have one of each. I don't care about the middle term. As soon as that last term is negative, I have one of each. Okay, for the next one, x squared plus 5x minus 6. Last term's negative, I have one of each. And again, for this one, negative 30 is negative, so I have one of each. So take a second and look at those. If I have a positive for the last term, I know I have two positives or two negatives. I then go to the middle term to figure out which one. If I have a negative for the last term, I automatically have one positive and one negative. Now we're going to go on and factor each of those polynomials in the next video.